Yo, what is going on, guys? It's your boy Aaron220 bringing you guys my ICBA Season 4 draft analysis. Now, this is the season where we don't go 2-10 in the ICBA. I want to try and at least get a near positive, if not a positive record this season. I think our team this season is pretty capable of it. You can already see our first pick and are probably already questioning what the fuck I'm doing since it's an Ubers league. And I pick one Tapu Koko. But we'll get into that in a second. So, of course, if you're new to the channel, hi, hello, salutations, hola, como estas? It's your boy Aaron220. Welcome to your first vid of mine because you're new to the channel. This is our ICBA Season 4 draft analysis. ICBA has been going on for 4 seasons now. It's led by Johnny GB. He's another coach of the ICBA along with everyone else. All of their links, by the way, will be in the description below. But basically, the ICBA is a S-tier league. Basically, I'll actually run through the S tier list as I explain it, but basically the S tiers were mons that are deemed normally too powerful for draft, but they're allowed here just costing a lot extra points. They come as a free pick, or if it's a mega spot, which I personally still feel is a crime, they take out points from your free picks, and also you need to pick an extra free mon, so I'll get into that when I go over those mons specifically as to why I think the Mega S tier rule is at least dumb, but anyway, so they have 3 different S tiers. Ultra Tier 1, these are the best type of S tiers. There are only 2 mons in here, Dawnwings, Necrozma, and Giratina Origin. It's 240 of your free points. So you still have 3 other free picks, so you know, it's manageable, and especially for something that amazing. You can still get a low tier Mega, like Johnny did Mega Camerupt last season. He actually won the season with Dawnwings, Necrozma, and Mega Camerupt. Giratina Origin is actually new this season, isn't allowed, thankfully. I really like the mon in general. I almost actually drafted it had I not went with the plan I went with. It's just, you know, it was a lot of points, so I want to make sure I was going to be really dedicated to getting it should I went that route. In Ultra Tier 2, these mons are 220 points. They're a little bit less broken, but they're still really solid mons. There's Aegislash, Darkrai, both, not both, I read Genesect as Grody as a Greninja for a second, but Genesect, Party Gren, Ho-Oh with no regen, Naganadel, and Pheromosa. So, you know, there's some very solid mons in here. Personally, I almost actually went Pheromosa here. It's a really fun mon, I really like it. I just didn't want to draft Pheromosa on this team. I had another bug type in mind. And then finally, we have the 200-point Ultra Tiers. This is our Ultra Tier 3. These mons consist of Deoxys Defense, Deoxys Speed, Battle Bond Gren, Lando I with Sheer Force, Mega Blaziken, Mega Latios, Mega Latios, Metagross, Magearna, and Tapu Lele. Now, the difference being is, unlike, so your Mega is normally accounted into your 5 free picks, quote-unquote. Because if you did a league that didn't require Mega, for example, I know there was a league, I think it was called the UPC, they gave 580 points for 5 picks, because that 180 points essentially is included for a Tier 1 Mega. At least that's what I have found through leagues that don't require Mega and give you extra free points to do it. So the reason why, and I guess that's sort of my analogy here, is if a Mega wasn't required to be drafted, and you could just go completely without a Mega, you would get extra points for it, because that would be an extra slot in your free picks, and that would be accounted for a Tier 1 essentially. That's why you get free picks for a Tier 2 through 4 Mega. So because of this, I felt like taking 200 points out, and in addition making you draft an extra free pick, that's what I found was really stupid personally about the S tier Mega rule. Because if I get, let's say, Mega Metagross, and while they make a lot of the really broken ones cheaper, to be fair, like Mega Metagross was an Ultra Tier 1 last season, same as Mega Blaziken, so, you know, they at least made them more reasonably priced, and to be honest, Mega Blaziken is almost worth it at that point. But the difference being, I guess, is that with this, it does mean that if I'm drafting a Mega Metagross, I now have 200 free points, and I have to get 4 mons, whereas if someone got, let's say, a Tapu Lele or Magearna, they have 200 points for 3 mons, and they could still get a Tier 1 Mega. Or even if I got an Ultra Tier, 1, you're essentially still getting more for that, in my opinion, just because you can still get a Tier 1 Mega, and you still have 3 free picks for 160 points. But this draft isn't about any of these mons. You'll see them in other people's drafts. Our team, it's really not about Ultra Tiers. It's about just a lot more middle-of-the-road plan. I felt like that this team actually is doing a really solid job of handling other S tiers, while it doesn't necessarily need one itself. First pick we have going into that is Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko does provide us a really solid speed tier, base 130. This is outspeeding pretty much every S tier. The only ones that are not getting outsped by, the only ones that we're not outspeeding actually are Deoxys Speed, which of course that's like the fastest mon that exists. There's Pheromosa, and I believe that's it. I believe that everything else we outspeed in terms of the S tier list. Tapu Koko with the electric typing is also a really solid mon. There aren't any ground types besides Lando I in terms of the S tier list, so a lot of these mons also do take a fair amount of damage. The only ones that resist are Giratina, Origin, Naganadel, and that's really it in terms of resists for electric typing. See, electric typing is of course a very powerful typing versus potential S tiers. We got it, it's a Z-Mon as well, so it's of course going to be putting a decent amount of work, both physically and specially. Of course, Tapu Koko does have a really nice move pool on both ends, sadly just does not get player off for some reason, I don't know why. But no physical barrier moves don't really hurt this thing, as it's electric typing, and even special Koko do a fair amount of damage overall. It has both U-turn and Volt Switch, of course, from momentum, so even ground types such as Lando Eye, they can't necessarily stop us from pivoting. And Scarf Koko is actually still really underrated in my opinion. It can carry teams in my opinion because you're outspeeding a lot of your opponent's potential Scarfers, and with terrain up you're going to boost your attack as well, and that'll mean that you can just hit their Scarfers really harder, as a lot of the faster Scarfers are pretty frail, whereas Koko itself actually is, for an offensive mon, has a fair amount of bulk. It's not like insane defensively, but it does have a fair amount of bulk at the very least, so of course that is very nice and beneficial to Koko in my opinion. So fastest boy, aka our Tapu Koko, this is of course, as I mentioned, one of our Z-Mons. ICBA Z rules, you have 240 Z points. Each tier costs a different amount of Z points. Ultra tiers 1 through 3, it's 160 for all Z moves, being status and offense only, is 140 points. For tier 1, which is what Koko was, it's 120 for all and 100 for offense only, which we got it as 100 for offense only. Tier 2, it's 180 for those. Tier 3, 80 and 60. Tier 4, 60 and 40. And tier 5, 40 and 20. So we had two other Z-Mons, I'll get into those when we get into them, but Tapu Koko is our first Z-Mon. I felt like that this was probably the Z-Mon that I wanted the most. There were a couple other options I did have, of course, and I'll get into those when I get into the Mons, but I felt like Koko, as long as I got Z-Koko, I was happy with it. I wasn't really shocked that Koko got to me. I did have 11th pick overall, but in an S tier league where you're gonna see things like Darkrai go round 1, Naganadel is really scary. I don't know if it's round 1 scary personally, but it definitely is still a terrifying mon nonetheless, and it's definitely scary enough for round 1. I just don't know if I drafted round 1, but that's personally because I sucked with it. There's also things such as Dawn Wings, of course, Giratina Origin, all these potential round 1 picks. So I wasn't necessarily shocked that I got Koko, but I still don't think it was a bad pick, especially for 11th pick overall. A lot of the really scary stuff that I would have even considered went. And again, I actually, before I get into the rest of the draft, I actually worked with Bird a lot on this team. Him and I came up with some stuff together that I felt I could work with. So that's sort of why, another reason that we didn't go with the S tier. We had actually another plan in mind, and had we not wanted the Mega that we get later on, and I'll get into it in a minute, I would have probably actually gotten Pheromosa, to be honest, and I could have gotten it too. Jelly actually picked like 2 picks after me, either pick after me or 2 picks after me, and I remember that was one of his first picks. I figured it was first round or second round though, but I could have gotten Pheromosa, and I probably would have had I not actually went with the Mega I did. But I still do think that Koko with the rest of my team is actually going to be putting a lot of work. Now, the next thing I wanted a really solid Hazard Mon, and also I figured I really wanted something that could just handle what Koko couldn't. So something that could take hits from ground types, even if it's not going to like be my best ground switch in. I want something that could at least take hits from ground types. I wanted something that at the very least could be on the slower end, because Koko is so fast. I wanted a slow option. I want my team to just be hyper offense on JPEG with all mons that are over base 100 speed or anything. We're not OP Jellicent. I wanted something, I guess, that could be really defensive because of how offensive Koko is. Since Koko can be mixed offensive, I was preferring a mixed defensive mon, and I figured that Ferrothorn really fit that role well. Ferrothorn is a really solid wall on both physical and special ends, especially physical with Iron Barbs, of course. It's not even passive either. Base 94 attack is actually really solid. This thing can actually handle a lot of walls really well. Even against the Violet users, this thing does get knockoffs, so of course it can pressure those. It offers also a really solid answer to a lot of these S tiers, as a lot of the S tiers that are really scary to Koko, besides like Scarf Pheromosa with Poison Jab, which could be scary, and otherwise this thing can handle a lot of them that are scary to Koko. There are a couple, of course, being like Scarf Pheromosa with Poison Jab and like Naganadel. But even then, if it's Scarf Pheromosa, then that doesn't necessarily scare me. I only say Scarf because I could run a Scarf Koko around it, but again, if he's Scarf Pheromosa, that always beats my Koko 1v1 regardless, assuming that he gets me in a range of Poison Jab. But against a lot of S tiers though, this thing does have a solid matchup. Ferrothorn, really solid mon and Ubers if you're unaware with the Ubers tier. I play a fair amount. I haven't played in a while, to be fair, but I've played a fair amount. I know that Ferrothorn does handle a lot of Ubers, even the lower tier Ubers. It can at the very least soft check a lot of them, if not just hard counter them. Things like Mega Metagross can barely touch me, or I don't even think Mega Metagross actually gets anything to touch me at all. Mega Lotties need like HP Fire to touch me. Lando again needs like HP Fire. Earth Power does a fair amount, to be fair, but it really needs HP Fire to do a lot of damage. Lele, again, this thing can actually take hits from even like a Specs Lele. Even a Z Lele we could take, even without a Berry necessarily. Though Berry, of course, does help a lot. We just need to run it really Spadef if we're not going to run a Berry. The point being, though, this thing does have a lot of ways around taking hits from the S tiers. It can also get up hazards, mainly being spikes, which so many of these S tiers get crippled by. There are mons such as Aegislash, there's Mega Metagross, Magearna, that are all going to be resisting rocks pretty well. But spikes do help versus a lot of these. In fact, the only one that I'd say that rocks are better versus is Ho-Oh. Everything else I'm going to want to spike versus regardless. Though, to be fair, I guess like Giratina Origin would be another one because Levitate. That's the one, I guess, that I can't really spike versus besides Ho-Oh. But a lot of these are really fat mons, or at the very least really bulky mons besides a couple of them, being like Gren's, Darkrai, Pheromosa, Naga. Everything else is pretty fat, or at the very least remotely has bulk to it. So spikes, of course, do help pressure a lot of these S tiers really well, and I think that overall that Barbara is going to be putting in a lot of work on her team. Next up, I actually went with a little bit of a weird pick, not gonna lie. At the very least, weird in terms of drafting it without what it's known to be drafted for. But I did want a really solid Dark type on this team. I didn't overly care about knockoff because I already have knockoff on Coco. I had a couple other mons playing that can knock off in general. At least if I'm remembering correctly, a couple other mons my team can get knockoff. Let me actually double check real quick. At the very least, though, I do have another knockoff user, and yeah, I do at the very least have a couple others, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's, of course, very solid there. But if, of course, I didn't really care about staff knockoff, I just wanted a Dark type, because something like a Dawn Wings or a Giratina, those are two of the by far scariest threats, and my team, while it can handle them, I don't necessarily have switch-ins to like a Calm Mind Dawn Wings to Crozma, for example, or even a Calm Mind Giratina could be really solid against my team, at least with these two mons. While I do have at the very least ways to deal damage to it, like a Specs Coco could deal damage to Giratina, I can only deal so much damage when that thing is boosted with already how fat it is. So I did want a solid Dark type. I figured that something that can get a lot of Spadef, because Ferrothorn, while it does have some Spadef, it's definitely more of a physical mon. This mon also ended up having a lot of setup potential in terms of it can set up Rock Polish, set up Dragon Dance. Gives me another hazard setter to take pressure off Ferrothorn, though Ferrothorn, to be fair, can run rocks pretty affordably in my opinion, and also spikes, but this does lead me to run more spikes than Ferrothorn, and I have other rockers now. This mon is actually going to be Dark Schmeat, our Tyranitar. So Tyranitar, I figured, was really good for a lot of reasons. One, it's a really offensive Dark type. It's physically offensive, whereas a lot of these Uber's mons that do have set up around Tyranitar, mainly Dawn Wings and Giratina, don't really have physical offensive setup that can boost their Phys Def. I mean, Giratina does have, of course, Will-O-Wisp, but Dawn Wings is going to 100% lose to Tyranitar in any sort of 1v1. And that's already really beneficial to me in the process, you know, having a hard counter to one of the scariest Ubers in format. I remember last ICBA season, one of my biggest problems in my team was my Dark type was Caxern, and any sort of Colbert Dawn Wings beat my entire team 1v1. It's a very terrifying mon. I'm shocked that we allowed it, but of course I love allowing everything, so I'll vote to allow pretty much any mon as long as it's not absurdly broken compared to everything else being voted on. But Dawn Wings, you know, very, very terrifying mon, and I wanted an answer for it. Tyranitar, while I'm not drafting Sand on this team, of course, if I did go with the Sand route, I believe I would need to get, like, Mega Glalie or something like that. I don't even think I could have gotten Mega Audino. Actually, I could have gotten Mega Audino. I remember Flame got it for that reason, but I would have needed a lot of free points, and even then, I would probably need to bank on getting, like, 2 Tier 5 Bs as my last free picks. Oh, wait, never mind. Well, in addition to T-Tar, at the very least, I would need to get, like, 2 Tier 5 Bs if I was doing that route. Or at the very least, I would need to hurt my draft a lot to get those mons. So I didn't really have a preference for getting Excadrill. I felt like it just wasn't worth it to me, especially with my team, how it ended up panning out. I just didn't really feel like that was the worthwhile option, because Drill, well, Drill would have been nice in terms of just getting really solid mon with weather. It doesn't really do a ton to a few of the teams that my opponents were already starting to plan out. A lot of bulky waters would have given my team problems besides like Coco. So I figured that while Sand could have been a worthwhile option, I sort of liked the non-Sand route better. And T-Tar does still have a lot of options. Of course, unarmed T-Tar could actually be very scary. If a Dawn Wings is packing Colbur Berry to just barely live a hit and maybe go for something like a Flash Cannon to 2-hit KO me or something. If I go unearthed T-Tar, then it's no longer going to have that berry, and if I invest enough speed to outspeed like a bulky Necrozma and it's not really running a speed set that week, then I'm just going to OHKO Dawn Wings Necrozma at that point. Simple as that. So Unnerved T-Tar is of course a very solid option in my opinion. I think it's going to T-Tar overall is going to be putting in a lot of work this season for the ICBA. I'm actually very excited to use this T-Tar on a non-sand team for once. I personally love the Mon. I know people such as Matty Brawlk have talked about all the time how T-Tar isn't a Mon that necessarily needs sand, and I want to try and see how that works this season. I think that has a lot of potential for me personally. Next up on my team, we have ourselves Cells at Work, the Reuniclus. Bulky Psychic types are really solid. If your opponent doesn't have a viable Dark type in your matchup, they run House because Dark types... actually, I was having this discussion in the NPL yesterday, and I think it spoke really true. A Dark type is a really mandatory type for the draft to have, and it sort of goes, again, along with why I picked up T-Tar non-sand, because a Dark type, it's the only Mon that is going to be immune to a Psychic hit. There is no sort of ability that can necessarily replicate what it does, because, for example, for Electric immunity, you could still get Volt Absorb. For Ground immunity, there's still Levitate, so types like Flying and Ground, while they're good types to have, they're not essential. But if you can crack your opponent's Dark type, that is their only 100% switch into a Psychic type move. Because, especially versus teams that, let's say, whoever drafts Tapu Lele, if I can kill their Dark type off, which actually, spoiler alert, it's our week 1 opponent, actually, Lawrence Talonflames, they drafted Lele, so of course, if let's say I hypothetically killed off Austin's Umbreon, which he drafted, then I now have free Psychic spam versus his entire team, especially with his Psychic Train boosting. Versus other teams, there are a lot of other teams that don't have the best Psychic switches in general, so of course a Reuniclus is really solid in that regard. Reuniclus is also a really solid Mon because it has Magic Guard, of course, which means it's a fat Mon that can't be Toxic Stalled, so even if I can't get a Cleric in a certain matchup, this is now a guarantee that I will not be Toxic Stalled out. So it does help my team a lot with the stall aspect, you know, 60-minute matches, of course, that's what I live for now that I upgraded my Wi-Fi. So Reuniclus, though, overall has a lot of sets to it. It also has a lot of offensive sets as well. Gives me a really solid special breaker, whereas Coco, while it can be solid, especially offensively, my team sort of lacked the special breaking aspect. Whereas a +1 Reuniclus, they're not the best switches that in terms of draft format. Reuniclus, of course, Psychic Fighting, that'll handle a lot of things. Even like really bulky fighting types won't necessarily want to take a +1 Focus Blast from a Reuniclus. It just doesn't exist. So yeah, overall though, Reuniclus I felt like was a really solid Mon. Regenerate, of course, does help me keep it alive longer as well. Just depends on what I want to run that week. So yeah, Reuniclus I felt like though really solid pick, and I'm excited to use Cells at Work this season. Next up, we got Ramon Classic. For anyone who's in the Heated Bros server from way back days, or who knows any bit about HBL on my channel, I'm not sure if anyone besides the people in it would actually remember that. No, it is not. It is not. I'm forgetting his name. It's not Halu's HBL. It's actually Heated Bros League 2 years ago. Or I guess originally ICBA, I should say, because that was what turning the Heated Bros League. Ramon used to always draft Snorlax. Then I remember that Ramon would like constantly sweep people with it. So of course I need to name this thing Ramon Classic after Ramon, because before he went to Sidui as his known thing, it was Snorlax. Ramon Classic, of course, a really fat Mon on both the special and even the physical end if you can get a curse up. With the super berries now, Gluttony is so viable of a set. It is such an amazingly fat Mon. It is disgusting to have to break for a lot of teams. If you could chip through fighting types, which we do have, while we do have, of course, a lot of fighting weakness already in our team, we do have a Reuniclus on top of Coco to handle the fighting types that would necessarily scare out my team, and we do have a couple answers later on in my draft as well that pair so nicely with the only weakness this thing has. And if you're not really having a fighting type hit, you need some sort of ridiculous wall breaker to actually break through a Snorlax, especially if it's getting set up with curses and it's just going to start recycling a Figgy Berry or something. This thing is just terrifying, and it's obnoxious to play against, especially for a tier 3 Mon. I think personally, for a tier 3 Mon, this is one of the most obnoxious things to play against, in my opinion. There are some other really scary tier 3 Mons too, but personally I think Snorlax is up there on that list for tier 3. So really excited I was able to get that. I haven't used Snorlax in so long, but I love playing a little Muck when I have used it in format. And Snorlax, in my opinion, is just like a better version of that. Of course, it does some things differently in terms of the coverage and the fact that it doesn't get stab knockoff. But in terms of the just sitting with a Figgy Berry and going Recycle Gluttony, I love Snorlax, and I personally think it does a better job at that specific aspect of it. Don't crucify me for it, it's just my opinion. But yeah, also it's another solid Trick Room option. As you can see with my team, I actually have a lot of potential Trick Room options now with my Trick Room Reuniclus. I have Snorlax, Reuniclus, Tyranitar even can be solid, Ferrothorn, all really solid options in Trick Room. So I'm starting to build up a really solid Trick Room core, and also a really solid Stall core, you know, 10 more minutes. Next up though, we have yet another Stall Mon. We have Body Bag, our Cofagrigus. This is another solid way around fighting types for my team. I do have ways around dark types at the very least, which this and Reuniclus, which are definitely some of my more reliable walls in my opinion. While I do have Ferrothorn, of course, that's just bulky, and Tyranitar isn't exactly a wall, it's just really fat. And Snorlax, I guess, is a wall, to be fair, and that does pair really nicely with Reuniclus and Cofagrigus, because Cofag is immune to fighting, Reuniclus resists, and Snorlax can just chew through hits that those would want to be worried about anyway, because it's not necessarily weak to dark, and no real dark types necessarily scare that out, I would say. There aren't really anything I can think of besides like a Scrafty, I guess, that would bother Snorlax. But Cofag in general was really solid. It gives my team T-Spikes as well, which is really clean because, of course, it helps me just outstall any other opponents that might want to try and break my team. Cofag, of course, with Mummy is a really solid way around a lot of opponents whose abilities might try and be their sole focus for trying to beat me. For example, if I have Mega Lop coming on this and just go for High Jump Kick, well, it will do a decent amount of damage to me, of course, because it's a Mega Lop with Scrappy. It's not going to have no other way to actually hit me that game. So, of course, unless it has, like, Foresight, which in that case, go my opponent. Also, free Willow turn right there. This is my best way around fighting types, in my opinion, and is my best way around, especially that horribly terrifying Mega Lop. I do have Reuniclus, of course, which does still help with that, but Cofag, in my opinion, is just a better way around it, because it really is just a one-and-done hit, and then Mega Lop has to go out. So, yeah, overall, though, just really solid fighting type deterrent for my team. I feel like my team is, again, starting to build a lot of Trick Room aspects. Having a second Trick Room setter is really solid for me. That's about it for Cofag. Next up here, we have Courage, the Cowardly Dog, our Zygarde 10%. I am a massive fan of Zygarde 50% personally. I almost actually drafted it in this plan, but I felt like T-Tart, while I do love Zygarde, I had another plan I was actually planning on drafting Zygarde for another league we will get into soon. At least for 50% form, that is. And Tyranitar I felt like just offered a lot to my upper tier, so I figured that Zygarde 10% hopefully can still do at least what I needed at 50% too. This thing with the band is still really solid because there aren't any real switch-ins to 1,000 arrows besides like Tangrowth and Tapu Bulu and other Fizz Def Grass types like that. Even then, they're not going to really take on an Outrage unless your name is Tapu Bulu, which in that case, I just have Sludge Wave for you. Overall though, Zygarde 10% helps patch a really solid gap between my Tapu Koko and my Tyranitar, and while it doesn't patch the gap fully, of course, it helps start to build that bridge in my upper speed tiers, because having a Tapu Koko is great to pressure a lot of faster opponents, but if everything base 129 and under up to like 62 base speed can run an Adamant Nature or a Modest Nature, then it doesn't really help having a fast Mon. So of course, Courage the Cowardly Dog being that base 115 mark does help a lot with that. It's my first ground type on this team, of course. I would have had another one had someone not fucking snipe me, Omega. But you know, we have to deal with that. That was our only snipe in the draft at the very least, so that does help a lot. Overall though, I do really like this in general on our team. I feel like the Dragon typing, of course, does pair really nicely with my Steel Dragon Fairy, core of Koko, Ferrothorn, and Zygarde 10%. That's really about all I have to say about Zygarde 10%. Next up we got ourselves a Alomomola, aka Stall Queen. I really didn't want to, I didn't plan on drafting a Stall team, I swear guys. Stall is not my playstyle of choice by any means. Tom thinks I did this intentionally. I told Tom every time he brings it up, had Omega not fucking snipe me, this would have been a Seismitoad, and that would have been, well, still Stally, less Stally. But once Omega sniped me, I was just like, fuck it, we need to embrace the Stall meme. So, Alomomola does offer a few things. For one, it does allow us to actually go for a better tier 5 Mon now. Actually, no, never mind. I forgot Seismitoad was also tier 4, that's why I went for it. And at this point, I already committed to another tier 5 Mon in general, so I would have needed to get 2 tier 5 Bs, I believe. I forget, but I would need to bump down points from somewhere in my plan. Oh yeah, because Seismitoad was also tier 4. If I wanted to get Swampert, which was a tier 3 B, I would have needed to actually get a lower tier Mega at this point, because I had my tier 5. My free pick was going to be a tier 5 B already, and I would have had my Mega, so I would need to actually get a lower tier Mega, which I really was not up for doing, so I had to sort of get a Alomomola. So I did miss out on the water ground typing, of course, but this does offer a lot of things. It offers a lot of regeneration to my team, because it's another regen Mon, while also being a Wish Passer and a healing Wish Passer, which is really solid for my team, as a lot of my Mons, such as Cofag, Ferrothorn, Snorlax, they don't have a recovery of their own outside of berries, and I guess rest. Even T-Tar as well, while it's not necessarily a stall Mon, it definitely does have a lot of defensive presence in my opinion. So, of course, having that solid Wish Passer with a really high HP stat, much higher than everything else on my team, well, not much higher than Snorlax, but higher than everything else by a decent margin. So having that fat Wish is also really solid. I believe this thing at the very least does get Baton Pass. I'm almost certain to get some sort of momentum. I forget what, but I can actually load it up right now real quick. But point being, though, is having Alomomola is a really solid aspect for my team in a lot of ways. And loading up a Alomomola, it does not get U-turn, I thought it did. It does not actually get any momentum, I thought it did, my bad. So even without momentum, though, this thing still does take hits really well. Sucks, of course, that I don't get momentum, but it does still get Healing Wish, which is really solid. Fat water types are also amazing. This thing even has like base 75 attack, so you know, during meme games I could run like a Bandit Alomomola or something, I don't know. Probably would never run that. It can even also, actually I just realized this now, this thing can actually heal its own status. While it can't be a full team status healer besides Healing Wish, this thing does actually get refreshed, so I can't even be Toxic Stalled if I run Refresh, which is actually a really clean option. I actually had no idea of that, but I looked it up mainly just because I was looking up for the momentum side and just happened to see it. So of course that is a really solid aspect of Alomomola. Of course, I actually didn't even know that when picking it. I picked it mainly for the Fat Water type, Regen Core, and also for Wish Passing. As Seismitoad, I wanted a bulkier ground when I was thinking Seismitoad. Sadly, I did not have that in my plan, and I really wanted to go with a certain tier 5 mon. I've been wanting to draft it for a while. And there's two I was going for. One of them I wanted to draft specifically with Tapu Koko, and one of them I just wanted to draft for a while now, and I feel like it helps with my lower speed end, such as like T-Tar, for example, and also helps with not having to run a Scarfer on my team. So I'll go into the first one of those tier 5 mons now, actually, and that is actually a little inspiration for this set, actually. Shoutouts to Pidonison, aka Mastodon. He actually passed me a team a while back with Tapu Koko and a certain Z-Mon, which is actually, by the way, T-Tar was our second Z-Mon, also offense only. This is a Z-Status Mon that I'm talking about right now. But this certain Z-Mon actually has a lot of presence in terms of beating one of OU's scariest water types in Toxapex for its typing, which is actually really surprising. And that Z-Mon is actually Typhlosion, aka Shadow Fire XD, our Typhlosion. This thing, if you give it Normalium Z under Electric Terrain, it can actually Oko a Toxapex with Normalium Z with Nature Power. So that's already a really cool reason right there to bring it. So we do have a fire type that actually counters really solid spin off water types in the format, and Toxapex being one of the best ones. Imagine what this thing's going to do with like a Milotic or something. So already water types beware for Shadow Fire XD, of course. Z Solar Beam is also another option of getting, but Electrum Z is just Normalium Z is just a really good meme. Typhlosion, really solid speed tier, helps again with patching the gap between T-Tar and also between Zyger 10%. While it doesn't fully patch the gap, and while I never actually fully patched that gap in my plan, I still think it at least helps a little bit. Another benefit to having Typhlosion, really solid fire type with my Fire Water Grass core being this Alomomola and Ferrothorn. This is adding a really solid special offensive variant to that core because my team was already very physically based. Because even Alomomola, while it just gets scalded off of base 40, it's not really doing shit to my opponents. So having Typhlosion here is a really solid aspect to my team. I felt like that I really needed a solid answer against Steel types, as my team right now really does not have a good answer around Steel types. I don't actually think I pick up a solid answer around Steel types in my tire plan besides Typhlosion, so that's a little bit scary. I might actually need to make some free agents for a fighting type now that I think about it. But that's for another day. It's for another day. Next up in our plan, we got the whole reason I drafted Koko. The whole reason I did not draft Pheromosa in my plan. We actually went with not Pheromosa, Mega B, aka Burned by Clef. Nickname comes courtesy of my boy Lavina May for his Mega Beedrill, which was about to win him the game. Then he hard swaps it on a Clefable and gets burned by a flamethrower and loses the entire game in his bracket round of Summer Showdown. So shoutouts to you, Lev. This is now going to be named in memory of your horrible choke in that game. I don't care if it was your only win chance. The fact that it happened makes it a choke, and it's just really funny that you lost your entire game to that. So of course, Mega B, aka Burned by Clef, really blistering high speed and attack stat with adaptability. Going to be an insane pivot for my team. Also, it's going to be outspeeding most Scarfers, anything under base 80, because it is level 50, of course. The base 80 Scarfers will just barely outspeed us. But anything like a Scarf Tran, we're going to outspeed anyway. So Tran's going to need to run Shuckaberry. It can't just run a Scarf around us. Any other of those like really low-ish tier Scarfers can't really outspeed us. This thing, of course, is going to have ways around really fast mons on my opponent's team. Even things like Zeraora, of course, this thing is going to have really solid ways around. This thing is actually surprisingly bulky too. I was running Calyx with Bird, or Bird was running Calyx for Mega B. He wanted to try and see if it could 1v1 Mega Venusaur, and we actually, spoiler alert, actually found a set that does 1v1 Mega Venusaur for our week 1 game. So you'll see that, of course, in the week 1 team builder, but I just thought it was really funny how bulky this thing can actually be. I really did not expect it to be that fat, but of course, this thing does get some solid moves in terms of just offensive type variety in general. I do think that Burn by Clef is going to offer a lot of usefulness to our team as long as it does not get burned by Clefable Flamethrower. I think that this thing will be a great asset to our team. Finally, though, we do have the People's Choice. This Mon has been nominated for Defensive MVP by the Unleague known as the UTL. Sorry for triggering all you UTL fans subscribe to me. This Mon has been the GOAT at handling one of the most annoying Mons in format, being Zygarde. Especially if you throw a Veil up, Zygarde's annoying, but you have your Zygarde countered on this team. This Mon is one of the best Tier 5 Violet Mons in Tier 5B ever. It also gets webs, of course, so I had to draft it. This Mon being Godloon, our Swadloon. Still debating on if I want to get a custom texture for it, not gonna lie. I might get a gold texture for it done by Flame. Who knows? I did it with Tinkershell. I might do it with Godloon. I'm still considering it. Comment down below, I guess, if you want me to or not. I can get a custom texture. If you have any other ideas, comment down below. I did for Tinkershell, might as well if you guys have any ideas for Godloon. But Godloon does, while having surprisingly low bulk for such a god at defensive MVP, this thing has, with an Violate, better stats and Toxapex. This thing does have potential sets to set up and actually beat any variant of Zygarde 1v1, assuming it's not like Specs HP Flying. But if you're running Specs HP Flying, my thought is you're now losing to the other 10 Mons on my team by doing so. So, yeah, Swadloon does, at the very least, force a little bit of prep in my opponent's team. Well, it's not a lot of prep for a Tier 5B Mon. If you're looking at Tier 5B options, if you're looking at what is down there, this thing provides webs to us. It provides a solid defensive Mon. While it's not like a intense wall, like, for example, it's not like a Blissey or a Chansey or Pex or a Reuniclus. This thing for a Tier 5B Mon, if you're looking at Tier 5B, the stats are awful on a lot of these Mons anyway. This thing does have a fair typing against ground types, which my team is a little bit weak to now. I don't have a flying type, of course. That's another thing on my team I lack. But for a team that needed a answer to at least check ground types, for a team that at least needed an answer around Mons such as Zygarde, which are definitely very scary for my team, I do have options for it. But again, in terms of offensive ground types, this thing handles a lot of other things that I would need as well covered. I felt like also with the utility it provides in webs that this thing was an overall really solid pick in my opinion. Whereas at the very least with like Tinkershell, it's not even passive either. This thing does at the very least get set up and a fair move pool to go around some potential threats to it. Well, not threats to it, but at the very least it can handle bulky waters really well, whereas Tinkershell is just ridiculously passive. So this thing at the very least has something to offer to my team. I think it's an actually very viable meme for a Tier 5B under-evolved Mon. I think it provides what you expect it to and more. And yeah, that's really all I gotta say about Godloon, our Swadloon. So that's our entire squad. We have Z Coco offense, we have Ferrothorn, Z Tyranitar offense, Reuniclus, Snorlax, Kofag, Zygarde 10%, Alomomola, Z Typhlosion, all Mega Beedrill, and Swadloon. What do you guys think of our team? Comment down below what you think. Comment down below if you want me to get the custom Swadloon. I'll get it done for you guys. If you want me to, I can send it off a Flame. He already told me I can totally get it done if I just send him the potentials model for it. So he just said he'd do whatever I needed it to. Otherwise, though, that's going to be it for this draft analysis. If you guys did enjoy, leave a like down below. Also, make sure to laugh at Omega because he only hit like 30 retweets on his tweet, so I will not be doing 60-minute live comms for my entire season. Week 1 is against Austin. We already bring Stall to our game versus Austin. So you guys got to make sure to check out that game when it goes up next Monday. Until then, I will see you guys later. Peace out.